Something is going on with Nintendo Switch Online and N64 games being added in specifically, and we're going to attempt to get to the bottom of it in this video because you may know, if you keep up with the channel regularly, we cover every new Nintendo Switch Online drop that happens. Subscribe if you're not already. And I've been generally positive with the last round of updates, considering that we've seen support for numerous consoles on the platform. In fact, we've seen support in just the last month for every single console besides N64, being Sega Genesis, NES, SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, and they've added in some quality titles that I've been happy with on those consoles. However, I need to bring it to everyone's attention today that it will be 3 full months from the last Nintendo 64 game update with Pokemon Stadium. As you can see, the last post from Nintendo of America around N64 was indeed in April 11th. Now, we know at the February Nintendo Direct this year that there was definitely a shift in focus towards the Game Boy family of systems that were now kind of the new focal point or justification of that expansion pass tier when it comes to Game Boy Advance, and giving the base tier customers some additional content with the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. And it does make some logical sense that Nintendo would want to focus on those consoles for a period of time, since they're kind of the new kid on the block. That said, we still have an ongoing unfinished roadmap of games that we learned about last year from Nintendo around the future editions for N64 titles. And while they use the word gradually on the pace of how they would be adding in those games, they are now just skipping 3 months straight up. So that's kind of a big deal for me whenever you're a 12-month paying subscriber and you're locked in for the full 12 months and you have no new game support for arguably the biggest draw for that expansion pass price, which is the Nintendo 64 library of games. I'm well aware that Nintendo's strategy is to drip feed this service with small updates over the course of time and not front load it for everyone all up front to just quickly enjoy all of the classic games all at one point in time, because they want you to remain an expansion pack subscriber or even just a base tier subscriber, as that is a huge portion of their monthly reoccurring revenue now for Nintendo's bottom line. The base tier, of course, gets you the functionality of online play and being able to play online multiplayer games with friends, although we're still missing voice chat and basic features that you would expect to have on any console in 2023. It at least also offers cloud storage in addition to NES, SNES, and now Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and you can argue that for $20 annually, that's really not a bad value. I think Nintendo has done a lot of positive work over the course of time with the expansion pack as well, building out the value for that $50 annual price point, but I do have an issue with the fact that we can't break it into a monthly payment, and they are just completely sporadic when it comes to their update cadence, as at one point in time with N64 games, in fact, when the N64 console was launched and new games started getting added into the service, you could, like clockwork, bank on Nintendo adding in one new game per calendar month. It might have been at the beginning of one month and then at the end of the next, but you can definitely take to the bank that Nintendo will be adding in at least one new N64 game per month. Now we are in a situation where we have skipped 3 months. I am hopeful that this video does get outdated relatively quickly, because there is something of a trend on the channel with when we have conversations like this, Nintendo tends to turn around and do some kind of update announcement, and I'm hopeful that happens soon for N64. But you have to look around and realize that we have Pokemon Stadium 2, 1080 Snowboarding, Excitebike 64, and Mario Party 3 all just waiting to be added. And the bigger problem is that we need to finish this roadmap before we can anticipate any new type of additions for other N64 games that are still beloved and that fans would love to play and be able to experience on the Switch today on the service. Games like Smash Bros. 64 with modern online play, that would be a huge win, and it's definitely in the wheelhouse of titles that Nintendo will bring to the service. I feel comfortable saying there's a 0% chance we don't get that game brought over, but it's going to take that much longer if we're waiting to just finish out our existing roadmap of N64 games that Nintendo has yet to announce any kind of update for at the time of filming. We have Banjo-Kazooie playable on the service already, but that game has a sequel, and Banjo-Tooie would be a huge win to get that playable. It's been enough time since the first one has been added to the service. Fans who have wanted to play it have already played it more than likely at this point, and many of them would probably enjoy playing the sequel. Games like Donkey Kong 64, which, depending on who you ask, some people say the game hasn't aged very gracefully. I still think 3D platformers are not as common as they should be, and I love to play a 3D platformer in the modern era, especially one that I have some level of nostalgia for, I'm ready to hear the DK Rap startup song once again and go through that entire adventure from start to finish. It's a fun game to play through. It will likely be headed to the service at some point in time as well, but until Nintendo finishes out this existing roadmap of games, we have no clue when or if it will be coming. Diddy Kong Racing is one of the most unique racing experience games ever. It is literally a kart racer style game, but with a unique adventure story built into it. Boss fights and various different unique level design and kart designs, as well as hovercrafts and just straight up airplanes. Like, the thing is awesome. It's a freaking masterpiece through and through. And I would love to see that added on as well in a future updated N64 games roadmap. And that's where I want to pivot the conversation around where we can really expect N64 games specifically to go with the expansion pack from here, because we're probably realistically looking at maybe this month in July, we do get a new N64 game. Let's just say it's 1080 snowboarding. That's great. I can't wait to play that. Then we will have to wait and see if August also gets a game, or if we go back to that alternating cycle more of where it's a Game Boy Advance game for that month and no love or support for N64. Well, you probably know what happens in September, and that historically it is a safe bet to assume we will have a Nintendo Direct presentation. And we also know that at the September Nintendo Direct, that is most frequently the event that Nintendo unveils some kind of new update for the service, whether it be a brand new console edition or whether it be an updated roadmap of the games, as it was at the September Direct last year that we got this updated outlook for N64 games that we are still waiting to be completed today. Well, now the situation is unless if Nintendo kind of front loads some of these missing games and maybe does 2 N64 games in a single month, and they actually stick to that for a couple months so that way they clear out the rest of this roadmap, we might be walking into the September Nintendo Direct with still pending N64 games, which makes you wonder if they will talk about a new updated roadmap of N64 and maybe even Game Boy Advance games or not. It's a total question mark. And while I do like being surprised with various Nintendo announcements over the course of time, and they're so fun to talk about because you never know what to expect, it's a little bit different when it is a ongoing subscription service that you're wanting to justify in your mind, and you're locked into a 12-month agreement with them, and you front loaded all the money to Nintendo. But if you're somebody who really wants N64 games and that's the major draw for you, we now are in a really unprecedented position because you really just don't know when Nintendo's going to choose to acknowledge the console again. And now you can look at history and say that some months they'll wait 3 full calendar months before they add in an additional game to the service, and that's something that I don't like to see. All of that said, obviously Nintendo has been showing support for the other consoles on the platform, and if they can get N64 games consistently in the rotation, I think a fair ask personally would be if every console on the platform would get some kind of update once per month. That would be a very comfortable amount of value in my opinion, and it would be great to see some kind of consistency form around our expectations of what's going to happen with NSO. Now clearly Nintendo will run out of their major first party games that they have for N64 and the other consoles at some point in time, and probably by the time that happens we'll be talking about next generation hardware where they can potentially unveil brand new systems like the GameCube and lean into that portion of history to feed into the subscription business that will ultimately become something like a Disney Plus for Nintendo type of games. But here's hoping this video is outdated relatively soon and we learn about what is next with Nintendo 64 games on NSO, but we are now officially approaching that 3-month period, which I definitely hope does not get repeated anytime in the near future. If we get past this one and we get a new update, let's hope that we start to see once per month N64 games come back and not be in this waiting and guessing game situation. But I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video what you think Nintendo's broader plan is with Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack from here. Do you think we have a shot of seeing something like 1 new update per console per month, and would you be happy with that? Or do you think it's something more that we will continue to see them somewhat alternate? On months that we get Game Boy Advance games, we don't get an N64 game, and vice versa. And bonus question, what do you want to see added in the most from the N64 and even Game Boy Advance library of games that haven't been announced or confirmed to be coming to the service at this point today? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before we leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.